Once upon a time, in a small, quiet village tucked between rolling hills and lush green forests, there was a girl named Amani. Amani was not like the other children in the village. While most kids spent their days helping their parents in the fields or playing games in the dusty streets, Amani had a curious mind and a heart full of adventure. She loved exploring the wild and untamed beauty of her village, from the golden fields to the towering hills. Her best friend, a scrappy little dog named Poppy, was her loyal companion in all her escapades. The village itself was humble, but full of life. The houses were made of mud with thatched roofs, and their walls told tales of generations past. Narrow, dusty roads wound through the village, leading to small gardens where children in tattered clothes played games, their laughter filling the air. Birds perched on tall, twisted trees, chirping and cawing as they watched the villagers go about their day. For all its simplicity, the village was Amani's whole world. But there was one place that the villagers dared not go, the green forest river. This river flowed deep within the forest on the other side of the hills. Surrounded by ancient trees and hidden by mist, the river had a mysterious reputation. Tales of strange whispers, eerie lights, and shadows lurking beneath the water kept even the bravest villagers away. Elders spoke in hushed tones about the forest, warning children never to venture near it, for it was the land of the unknown. But to Amani, these stories only fueled her curiosity. One day, as she walked back from her grandmother's house, Amani overheard a group of older kids whispering about the green forest river. She heard stories of shimmering stones along the riverbanks, colors that danced like rainbows in the water, and flowers that glowed in the moonlight. Her heart raced at the thought. She couldn't understand why everyone was so afraid, it sounded magical to her. So, Amani made a decision. She would go to the green forest river and uncover its mysteries herself. Early the next morning, as the village was waking up, Amani prepared for her adventure. She packed a small bag with a piece of bread, an apple, and her grandmother's old, rusty compass. She called Poppy, and the two set off along the dusty road, past the familiar houses and fields, and toward the forest that lay beyond the hills. The sun was just rising, casting a golden glow over the village, and the morning air was filled with birdsong. As they reached the forest edge, Amani took a deep breath. The trees were tall and thick, their branches reaching out like giant hands. She glanced back at her village one last time, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Then, with Poppy at her side, she stepped into the forest. The forest was alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves, the chattering of birds, and the distant hoot of an owl who hadn't quite gone to sleep yet. The path was narrow, winding through trees and bushes, and patches of sunlight danced on the ground. Amani and Poppy wandered deeper and deeper, enchanted by the beauty of the forest. They spotted squirrels darting up trees, colorful butterflies fluttering about, and mushrooms that looked like little stools scattered along the forest floor. After what felt like hours of walking, they heard it, the faint sound of water flowing. Amani's heart leaped. She quickened her pace, pushing past branches and hopping over roots, until finally, they reached the edge of the green forest river. And it was even more beautiful than she had imagined. The river sparkled like silver under the sunlight, and tiny stones along the riverbank glistened in shades of blue, green, and purple. The water was clear and gentle, flowing over smooth stones, and strange flowers with soft, glowing petals grew along the banks. Amani knelt by the water, mesmerized by the sight. She reached down to touch the river, feeling its coolness on her fingertips. Poppy barked happily, wagging his tail and sniffing at the strange flowers. For a moment, Amani forgot all about the warnings, the eerie stories, and the fears that had kept people away. She felt like she had discovered a hidden world, one meant just for her. But as the sun climbed higher in the sky, Amani realized she had been there for quite some time. It was time to go back. She called Poppy, who was busy chasing a dragonfly, and the two started making their way back along the path they had come. But as they walked, Amani noticed something strange. The trees didn't look as familiar, and the path seemed narrower, more twisted. She pulled out her grandmother's compass, but the needle spun in circles, refusing to settle. Amani's heart began to pound. She tried retracing her steps, but every path seemed to lead to another part of the forest she didn't recognize. She called out for help, her voice echoing through the trees, but there was no answer except for the sounds of the forest. As evening approached, Amani sat down on a fallen log, tears welling up in her eyes. She had thought she was brave, but now, lost and far from home, she felt small and afraid. Poppy, sensing her fear, nuzzled her hand, giving a small whine. Amani hugged him tightly, feeling a bit of comfort in her loyal friend. Just as she was beginning to lose hope, she heard a faint melody drifting through the trees. It was soft, almost like a lullaby, and it seemed to beckon her. Wiping her tears, Amani stood up and followed the sound, holding Poppy close. They walked carefully, following the melody, until they reached a clearing. In the clearing stood an old woman dressed in flowing robes, her hair as silver as the river's sparkle. She was humming a gentle tune and was surrounded by animals, birds, rabbits, and even a fox, all listening to her song. Amani was both scared and fascinated, but something about the woman felt safe. The woman looked up, her eyes kind and wise, and smiled at Amani. "You've come a long way, little one," she said in a voice that was as soft as the breeze. "And I believe you're ready to go home." Amani nodded, her voice caught in her throat. The woman gently touched her forehead and whispered a few words, telling Amani that courage comes not from never being afraid, but from facing fears with a brave heart. "And remember," the woman said with a smile, "the green forest river may hold mysteries, but it is also filled with magic for those who respect it." With that, the woman pointed to a path, one that Amani hadn't noticed before. She thanked the woman, and with Poppy at her side, began walking along the path. This time, the trees seemed to open up before her, and she could see the familiar hills and the distant roofs of her village. As they stepped out of the forest and onto the dusty village road, Amani felt a wave of relief. By the time Amani returned to the village, the sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the fields and houses. Her parents, who had been worried sick, ran to her and held her tightly. She told them about her journey, the river, and the wise woman who had shown her the way. Her parents listened, their eyes wide with amazement and relief. Amani and Poppy lived happily after.